BG podcast number 73. We are live. 40 of you guys already in the chat. Good evening to all the regulars. Stuart MB, Jared, Oasis, Cameron, to Del Boy. Lots of the regular faces. Thanks for joining, everyone. Every 8:30 on a Wednesday, we're here. We're discussing all things boxing. Format of the show, as usual, we're going to take a look back at last week's boxing. Obviously, we're going to be talking Deontay Wilder. We're going to be talking Eddie Hearn's Monaco Bill. We'll move on to some of the news in the sport. A lot of people interested in discussing Joseph Parker versus Lucas Brown. Going to be having a look at the Tyson Fury return, Joe Joyce's latest fight. Then we'll look ahead to next week's boxing action. You've got Josh Taylor fighting, Frank Warren Bill up in Newcastle, headlined by the two Liams with Nathan Gorman on the undercard. We'll have a talk over about the stuff going on in the States, Eddie Hearn's debut in America, Daniel Jacobs, and also Jarrell Miller versus Marius Wack. So huge amount to get through. We don't have Jay on the panel tonight. He's otherwise engaged, unfortunately. But we do have Jet, Irish Tom, and by far my favourite panellist, Paul. And with that in mind, we will go straight in with Paul. Paul, how's things?
I'm all right, mate. I'm good. Yeah, you were frozen then. I don't know if you were frozen for everybody else or just me. But yeah, I'm good. I'm good, man. How you doing? All right.
Living the dream, Paul. Living the dream. But yeah, Paul. There's only one place we can start, and that is the absolute destruction that Romain Stavern suffered at the hands, literally at the hands of Deontay Wilder. Let's hear your take on that devastating performance, mate.
Yeah, I mean, look, man. It was the ghost of Romain Stavern, really, wasn't it? I mean, look, Wilder looked good. He looked good. He looked sharp. The jab was very, very good, very snappy for me. That 1-2, you know, the right hand down the middle seemed to just pierce that guard, and it was a good shot. Very wild afterwards. You know, the way he kind of like almost sprinted across the ring. Like, I don't know, it's just weird. You know, like, people are going a little bit overboard with this performance for me. That, you know, like, I can't help just think he's kind of like, you know, he dismisses a Dillian White fight, which would clearly build his name for the potential AJ fight in this country. Yeah, if he was to fight Dillian White, you know, like, the most dim-witted of people can understand a concept like that. Yet apparently he can't understand it, and it's kind of like Dillian White since 2015 when you know, AJ beat Dillian White and Deontay Wilder won the WBC title. Romain Stavern's fought Derek Rossi in a fight he got dropped in and nobody else. Dillian White's beat Derek Chisora and Robert Helenius, and yet he can't fight Dillian White, but he is willing to just sort of like beat up a ghost of Romain Stavern again. I don't know. It's just kind of like it's all a little bit weird. And then with the Brazil Molina being is that? I mean, have they clarified this? Was that a final eliminator?
Well, an initial statement suggested it was a final eliminator. Apparently, Eddie Hearn has complained, and there is now some doubt as to whether it still remains a final eliminator. So that's unclear. Paul, I'm not saying I disagree with you in any sense, but I'm just playing devil's advocate because we will get some people commenting this in the comment section. The Stavern fight was a mandatory. You know, Stavern was the #1 ranked contender by the WBC. Now, clearly, that's a terrible thing that he's ranked #1, but you could argue that's not Deontay Wilder's fault. So I guess the argument about Dillian White is more whether he take Dillian as a voluntary away from home.
Yeah, and that's a fair point. And no, it's not Dillian White's, and it's not Deontay Wilder's fault. Just as the Povetkin saga wasn't his fault, and the Luis Ortiz saga wasn't his fault. But I kind of like. I just think, you know, the Dillian White fight is a very obvious sort of like way of building his profile in the UK. He's got people, you know, guys like Shelley Finkel who have been around for years and years and years that can quite clearly see this and advise him here. And it's kind of like, I don't know. I just find it weird. Look, the performance was good. He did look good. I don't agree with Eddie Hearn that the fact that he only comes in at £220 or whatever is gonna mean that AJ just eats him up or whatever it was that AJ's supposed to have said. Clearly, that, you know, the only sort of like real issue with somebody coming in that light would be, have they got enough power? I think that it's quite clear that Deontay Wilder has the power to knock out any heavyweight in the world. So regardless of whether he's £220 or £270, really, if anything, I'm kind of like, you know, as a fan of boxing, not an AJ fanboy, but I'm a fan of his. I like him as a fighter. I'm actually, if anything, I'm more concerned about AJ's increase in weight and the effect that seems to have had on him. Look, I said Takam would take him long. I really didn't see him getting rid of Takam as early as most people thought. Takam is a durable guy. I actually think Takam's a better fighter than Bermane Stiverne. I think he's even more durable than Bermane Stiverne even was, you know, when he was Bermane Stiverne, you know. Takam, you know, if you look at Takam, I think, am I right in saying Povetkin is the only guy that knocked Takam out?
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at that fight, Povetkin looked like he was just starting the first round in that 11th or whenever it was that he knocked him out. After an absolute war, and Povetkin is considered, you know, I think most people would sort of concede that Povetkin is probably top 5. He's certainly top 10. And so, you know, I think, I don't know. What as far as I'm getting off topic here. Wilder did look good, but I just wonder how much we can take from that form, considering Stiverne just looked awful. He looked very, very sloppy. He was clearly overweight. He was clearly flabby. I watched it again today and I counted the punches he actually threw in that first round, Stiverne. And he actually threw 4 jabs, and they were kind of like half-hearted jabs. They weren't even really at the face. A couple of them were sort of like at the body, a couple of them at the solar plexus, and all of them missed. I mean, he did look good. Credit to him for the win, but I just don't know how valid of a win it was. I'm not sure that any sort of like young sort of like game heavyweight wouldn't have destroyed that version of Bermane Stiverne, to be completely honest.
Paul, let me just ask you another question on a related note. After the fight, Wilder quite quick to call out AJ, you know, certainly giving the suggestion that Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn are running, that they're docking the fight. You know, Team Wilder seems to be reliant on Eddie Hearn making offers. You know, they seem to be reliant on you know, us in the UK playing host and having them over and us hosting the event. Now, Joshua, in his interview that went up today with IFL TV, and Eddie Hearn seemed to be asking the question, why don't you offer us a contract? Why don't you make us an offer? You know, we're not running. If you don't want to run, you make us an offer. Give me your take on that. Do you think logically it has to be an offer from Eddie Hearn's side, because clearly the money in the fight is in the UK? Or do you think that if Deontay Wilder is going to be accusing people of running and ducking, his team should be looking to make an offer?
Well, I think both points are valid. I think, you know, if they are going to be doing that, then why can't they make an offer? I you know, I certainly agree with that. At the same time, I do think the logical thing would be for it to happen here. I mean, if we look at, you know, if it's in Vegas or whatever, you're going to lose a certain proportion of the of the potential pay-per-view crowd here because of the time of it. Not everybody is as hardcore a fan like is a hardcore enough of a fan of AJ to stay up till 4 a.m. And so you're gonna potentially lose some of that revenue. So I think for that reason, and for the reason that Deontay Wilder doesn't sell a huge amount of tickets. He's not a big name. And I don't know why it is, but he's not. I mean, he talks quite well. He's clearly got a decent record. Well, I don't mean a decent. His record as far as names is pretty poor for the amount of fights he's had. But I mean, like the fact that it's all knockouts and stuff. But he's not a big seller. He's not a big ticket seller, and I just think it's kind of logical that it should be here. I mean, I really don't think that AJ should be fighting people like that at this point. I said it before the Charles Martin fight. I said he shouldn't be fighting for world title because it's the fights that are going to come afterwards that are the problem. Obviously, we can't do anything about that now, but he is still learning. And, our friend Ultratech talks about people being an accident waiting to happen. I don't know if he's included AJ in that.
Yes.
I believe he. Yeah, I believe he may have done, and I kind of agree with that. I think it's definite big question marks over his stamina, definite big question marks over his chin. I know he got up in the Klitschko fight, but he was unsteady for quite a couple of rounds after that, and he really essentially took 2 or 3 rounds off after that. I don't think somebody like Wilder would allow him to take 3 rounds off. And what we do know about Wilder is he does fight. His stamina is decent. And so, I don't know. I would like to see that fight happen sort of like at the end of next year rather than, they seem to be trying to push for it really soon. It seems like a bit of a desperate move for Wilder, I think. I think he's kind of like getting to that. How old's Wilder now? 32? He's 32, yeah. So, I mean, he's not getting any younger. And you've got to imagine, if you look at the heavyweight landscape, there isn't really that many people that he's going to get in the ring with that are going to give him any sort of big payday. I know Eddie Hearn said that Charles Martin was paid 3 times the amount of Wilder's biggest payday. And so, I just think it's kind of like Wilder was just thinking, look, I'm coming to the end of my career here. I need this AJ fight. And I think that's really what it's essentially all about. And I think Eddie Hearn and AJ hold all the cards, essentially. Wilder's got a WBC bout, that's it. As far as commercially, as far as everything else, he needs AJ rather than the other way around.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers for that, Paul. I think you raise a very interesting point about Wilder's age. Wilder's 32. He hasn't got too many miles on the clock. He hasn't been in too many wars. But at the same time, he's got an extremely athletic style, relies on pace and power and athleticism rather than angles and technique and that sort of thing. So I do wonder, there's nothing to say Deontay Wilder will be the same fighter at 35 as he is at 32. If that fight didn't happen in 2018, if it was 2019 or 2020, perhaps Wilder's factor would be an age. Could potentially be a factor, his age. So I think that's a very, very interesting point you raised, Paul. Let's bring Irish Tom in. Shout out to Irish Tom. 170 of you guys already watching live, which is pretty good numbers for us. So thanks to everyone for joining, especially if you're new. Please hit the thumbs up button. Of the 170, less than a quarter of you have done that. So help us out, and that will get even more new people joining. Irish, let's bring you in. What's your take on Deontay Wilder's performance, and also your take on this Anthony Joshua debate?
Well, it was a good performance, but it was a poor Bermain Stavern. Wilder did what he needed to do, but he did it in emphatic fashion. Looked good. There's not too much to say about it.
And your thoughts on the discussion about Anthony Joshua? Wilder coming out making a lot of accusations against Anthony Joshua, and really putting the pressure on that fight to happen next. Do you think that that's a fight that we expect to see in 2018?
It's the fight all the fans want. Look, this idea that the fight has to percolate, to be honest with you, I think is nonsense. Look, Eddie Hearn can sell a fight. Eddie Hearn said that Errol Spence Jr., nobody knows him, and yet when the fight was made, it was massive when they came over here, and it filled out a football stadium. So it's not like all these fight fans out there are complete nobodies, that casuals, that they just are totally spoon-fed. Most people who watch boxing, who watch AJ, most people who buy a pay-per-view, I think they know who Deontay Wilder is. Deontay Wilder has been co-commentating. They've had him there for the Klitschko fight. Anybody who's got any interest in boxing knows that this is one of the biggest fights in the world. So I don't just go with this line that it needs, another 3 fights, one over here and one over there. I think that's horseshit.
Irish, have you seen the video that went up on IFL TV about half an hour ago of Eddie Hearn in New York?
I didn't see it, but I saw the title, so I know what he's doing. But
through a street in New York, asking randomers if they've heard of Deontay Wilder, and no one has. But it's only a brief video, obviously. But yeah, that's the line he's obviously trying to portray.
Yeah. Well, totally, But remember, I for the first time in a long time, I listened to the worst boxing podcast in the world, the Boxing Voice, where they had all them punters on. And Eddie, I don't believe they want that fight. I believe that AJ might want that fight, but I don't believe Eddie Hearn wants that fight. Because it's a risky fight for them. And he'll come up with any kind of nonsense and lies to do with it. Eddie's a very good salesman, a very good promoter. But, you couldn't believe a word that comes out of his mouth. He was saying, I don't know if I really listened to that show. He was saying, I don't know who am I supposed to talk to. Am I supposed to ring Al Heyman? Am I supposed to bring this Shelley Finkel? Am I supposed to ring some other punter? And then it turns out that he's been in contact with Shelley Finkel about, the Dillian White fight. So he knows exactly who to talk to. And all this stuff about Joshua's early on, his development, and, it's like bullshit. He's the #1 heavyweight in the world. You can't say you win a world title, you defend it 3 or 4 times, you unify the title, you defend the unified title, and then you can't make an excuse like, it's early on in his development, and we don't want this fight now. It'd make more sense in 8 months. Fuck that, you're the world title. You're the #1 heavyweight in the world. The #2 heavyweight in the world is calling you out, proper calling you out. Let's make the fight. Don't need a fight in between. It can be in May, put it in Wembley. I don't care. If they actually wanted to make more money out of it, it would go to Vegas. But I don't think Eddie Hearn ever wants to let AJ go to America, to be honest. Because I think once he goes to America, you lose control. The British promoters historically have lost control of fighters when they go to America. I don't know if there's one British fighter that based himself in America who stayed with the promoter. They always jump ship. So I don't think Eddie Hearn, he's protecting his asset. But, it's interesting. I saw the IFL then today with Joshua, and I thought Joshua looked really pissed off in that interview.
He seems to be saying Wilder should make him an offer, Tom.
Look, there's a load of bullshit talking about that. Look, Anthony Joshua now all of a sudden is giving out about Deontay Wilder calling him out. Yet Anthony Joshua calls out Tyson Fury after his fights. Double fucking standards. And I also think that, on that Boxing Voice show, Shelley Finkel said he had the email that said, if you do the Dillian White fight, you'll get the AJ fight. And Eddie didn't deny it when he said that. And, I think in an interview with IFL, Joshua looked pissed off that Eddie Hearn was using Dillian White, making money on Dillian White off the back of his own name. I do think that. I think it looks like he was a bit pissed off. you know, make the Dillian White fight because he'll make money on that and the Anthony Joshua fight if it does happen. But, you know, AJ doesn't give a fuck about Dillian White. And, you know, it looked like, to me, like AJ preferred to not allow Dillian White to get a big fucking payday. But, you know, it's bullshit. The fight should happen. I think Anthony Joshua will take the fight before Eddie Hearn would ever take the fight. Because I think AJ is a fighting man, you know. But I think, you know, I think AJ is the type of guy who doesn't like guys calling him, you know, a pussy or a ducker. And I think the fight will happen. But there'll be a lot of rigmarole and, you know, about the percentages and all this. But, you know, people aren't stupid. Like look at, you know, this idea that because your biggest payday before was $1 million, you should only get a small amount. But it's kind of nonsense because AJ can't, like, it's not like, you know, I think Paul earlier was saying that Deontay Wilder, AJ doesn't need him, Deontay Wilder needs AJ. But I think that's false. You know, fighters need opponents. They need their big opponents. If AJ kept on, AJ wouldn't be able to keep selling at Wembley if he was fighting dog shit year in, year out. Because after Wilder, who is he going to take on? He's not going to fight Povetkin. He's not going to fight Luis Ortiz. He might fight Joseph Parker. That's the only fight that's out there for him. So you do need a dancing partner. And, you know, we'll see what happens. But, you know, we'll see what happens.
I think the Parker fight might happen next. But what I meant there was kind of like AJ's already made tens of millions. And the same can't be said for Wilder. And Wilder's older. So, I mean, like, I think Wilder needs him more. But I disagree with one thing you said there, Tom. You said that if they want to make more money, they'll take it to Vegas. I'm not sure that they'd make more money taking it to Vegas than they would if they built it here and then did it in Wembley. I think that'd make more money.
No way. Absolutely no way. Look at American pay-per-view versus British pay-per-view. It's an order of 6 times the amount of money you can make over there. Just
not a big pay-per-view name over there. And the thing is,
Joshua, not over there.
Telling you, those two big guys. Sorry, Paul. Go on.
Name over there. Like Wilder's not a big name over there, and neither is Joshua. And so, therefore, I think it'd do better here if they built up Wilder a little bit. Say, for example, with a Dillian White fight. I know that's probably looking less likely now, but then put it on in Wembley after like a big build with it. I think that'd make more money because I don't think either of them are big names over there.
Paul, look, the number 1 and the number 2 heavyweight fighting in America, 2 6'6", 6'7" guys with what fought about 60 fights between them and 59 knockouts. Wilder is a big talker. Wilder is known in America. You know, the fact that he hasn't been pay-per-view is a different fact. It's the fact that there's been no big money fight in America, really. This is a big money fight. This is a pay-per-view fight. Look, I don't like pay-per-view, but that in America would sell like fucking hotcakes. They've been dying for a big heavyweight fight in America for 10 years, hasn't been one. That'll sell. If it does a million over here, right? If it does a million pay-per-views over here, right? In America, it only has to do like 200,000 pay-per-views. Now, Gennady Golovkin against David Lemieux in his first fight did 150,000 pay-per-views, right? That's the size of a million pay-per-view fight over here. Deontay Wilder against Anthony Joshua in America does magnitudes better than Golovkin versus Lemieux.
Well,
no questions.
I'm not sure your maths is 100. I hear your point. A UK pay-per-view...
Yeah, we go through this every time.
Pay-per-view is $30. An American pay-per-view is $80. So
the UK pay-per-view is not $30. The exchange rate is totally different.
Well, at the minute, $1 is £1.3. So £20 for a pay-per-view is $29. And an American pay-per-view is about $80.
It's $26. And a normal pay-per-view in America,
1.3 times 3 is 29.
1.3 times 2
is 29.
1.3.
But that's not. It doesn't matter.
No, it does. 1.3 times 2 is 2.6. It's $26, and the average price of a pay-per-view, that pay-per-view in America will be $100. Right, so it's not 5, it's 4-to-1 ratio. Okay, and then so you got 4 times the sell. So it has to do a quarter of the pay-per-views,
but also
because it won't be pay-per-view in America.
One second. Also, it's the ticket sales in the UK would be far more substantial. That easily sells.
It wouldn't be
90,000 at Wembley easily.
Yeah, and the prices in Vegas, MGM Grand, will be like $5,000 or $10,000 tickets, just like it will be for Floyd. They do a bigger gate. They make bigger money on the gate by putting it in the MGM or the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas than they do in putting it in a 100,000-seater football stadium.
Well, Floyd makes more money.
They'll tell you
Canelo makes more money, but neither of these guys have got any history of doing that. And the final thing I'd add,
that fight will sell out. That fight will sell. Look,
wait a second.
We can argue about this. I'm just telling you that's how it. It'll absolutely do similar numbers to GGG versus.
Do super numbers wherever it is, but what I'm saying is it's not cut and dry. It does 90,000 in the UK. It probably does 20,000 in America. The other thing is, I think it probably does 2 million pay-per-view in the UK market. I think it's a substantially bigger fight than the Klitschko fight.
Why is it bigger than the Klitschko fight? I don't understand that.
Because Anthony Joshua's profile has absolutely spiraled subsequent to that Klitschko fight. He's going to be Sports Personality of the Year. He's on every advertisement. He's the nation. And the other thing I'd say is, if you have the fight in the US, if you have the fight in the US market, you're going to lose the majority of those British pay-per-view buys. I know for one, I'm not staying up till 4 o'clock in the morning and paying the money to watch it. I'd rather go to bed and watch it today at that sort of time.
Gossip, who are you kidding? Who are you fucking kidding? Gossip not getting up for the fucking heavyweight #1 versus 2. Jesus Christ. Vlad, look, if it does 2 million buys in the UK, right, let's assume that, right? All it has to do in America is 500 buys to match that. And of those 2 million buys that will be on here, you can be sure there'll be probably still 500,000 UK buys. Yeah, waiting up. People did it for Ricky Hatton. They're going to do it for Joshua. And, the gate in America will be bigger in a 20,000-seater arena. They'll get a bigger gate in Vegas than they will in a 100,000-seater or in 90,000-seat in here. They'll get a bigger gate because not only do they sell the tickets for multiples, like large multiples of what they sell them for here, but they also get a massive site fee from Vegas for attracting all the high rollers around the world to it.
Yeah, but I don't think they.
So just let me finish, right? So they sell a quarter. So if that does 1 million pay-per-views in America, it smashes Britain out of the water. And to me, 1 million is not an unrealistic number. It's just not. It doubles the amount of money. Now, I don't know where it'll happen or not. But it always it mystifies me how every time we have a discussion about pay-per-view, America versus here, America is way bigger. It's a massively bigger market. Way bigger. If AJ was to make the move over there and be a star in America, he makes money like Floyd, right? Which is way bigger than he makes now.
The American...
Right? But we have this argument every time that it's impossible to do. Lennox did it.
The American pay-per-view market is slightly uncertain. Terence Crawford.
That's because the stars. Look, you're talking about the stars. Canelo is not uncertain for Canelo.
Yeah, what I was trying to say. Manny Pacquiao is a star. He has turned in exceptionally poor pay-per-view numbers. Now, all I'm saying, I agree with you. On balance, they probably sell a lot of pay-per-views, but neither Anthony Joshua nor Deontay Wilder have any track record of selling pay-per-views in the States. Neither of them have any track record of selling out big events in the States. It is not a given.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
No, they
Yes,
don't.
they do.
They don't. And
Deontay Wilder sells out Alabama every time he fights there.
he doesn't. He doesn't sell it out at all.
He does sell out Alabama.
He doesn't, mate. He doesn't.
But anyway, like regardless, fights will make
the weekend
pay-per-view.
At the press conference in the weekend, there, one of them was saying, "Why was the six sections above there empty?" And they brushed off the question. That was in the last fight there in this Stavern one in New York. The thing that
because of the shit fight.
The thing that you're talking about though, Tom, is you're saying like, when Floyd fights, it's this much on the gate and everything. They're not going to put. It's not going to be anywhere near that amount. Floyd was a superstar over there. Neither of these guys are at this point.
That fight
versus fight in New York, his very last fight, you could get in to watch it in New York for $33.
Yes, and it was against Stavern. It was a 1-20 on fight, and no one wanted to see it. If that was Luis Ortiz, it would have been a very different event. Sorry? If it was Luis Ortiz, but here, one thing, look, Gennady Golovkin.
$3.
Huh?
It didn't even sell out at that price, Tom. In fact, it didn't come close to selling out.
No.
Yeah, well, look, let's just look at how look, the New York market, it is different. But this has been the biggest fight in world boxing. It's on a par with Canelo versus GGG. You know, it just is. You can't tell me that it's not a fight as big as Canelo versus GGG. All the boxing fans in America will be going crazy for this fight. People saying that look, Gennady Golovkin, who's not American, fought a Canadian, right, David Lemieux, and they got 160,000 buys fighting in Madison Square Garden. That fight is a fraction of what this fight would be in America. And yet, if they did it in America, all they need to do is 500,000 to match what it would get over in England. If they do 1 million, they double their take. If they do 1 million pay-per-views, they double their take. Look, you're never getting 4 million pay-per-views.
Should Wilder and Al Heyman then be making an offer to Joshua based on your logic?
I don't care who makes them. I'm just saying that's where the money is. And if you know, we're naive to think that like the main reason why Anthony Joshua is not going to America is probably Eddie Hearn doesn't want to lose him.
No.
Simple as that.
No, I think the main reason Anthony Joshua doesn't go over to America is because he's making so much money here. And I think Tom
that's bullshit, Paul. That's bullshit. You make more in America.
No, listen, right? What Tom BG just said just now, if that was the case, if it was, you know, bigger over there, why isn't Al Heyman and that making an offer to Eddie Hearn? That's valid. If they thought it was a bigger fight being over there, they would be making an offer, but they're not. They're sitting there going, well, why don't you make offers? You haven't been in touch with us and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. They know, as well as most people with a brain, is that boxing is huge in the UK at the minute, and it's not huge in the US. That's why you've got guys like Danny Jacobs signing with Eddie Hearn and coming over here where he's not even known, because they're trying to get a slice of the boom that's going on over here at the minute.
That's such rubbish. We just had the biggest fight of the year. The biggest fight in the year of a magnitude of 3 was GGG versus Canelo. Yeah, it was at least twice the size of AJ Klitschko, right? There's just no denying that. If you want to live in Billy Britland, lads, fucking live there. But it's not true. The biggest market it is in America. The fact that the pay-per-view numbers have gone down is because America is in search of the big star. If Joshua went over there, he would be earning multiples of what he earns over here.
Tom,
multiples. Simple as that.
You can't compare Canelo on Cinco de Mayo with Triple G to a fight that neither fighters has track record of yet. That's a thing all on its own, mate. You can't compare the two things.
Of course you can compare. It's the biggest fight in world boxing. You're saying you can't compare one of the biggest fights in world boxing with another of the biggest fights in world boxing.
I don't think
that's a mega fight. It's a mega fight.
I don't think to the American market, AJ or Deontay Wilder are anywhere near as big of a name as either Canelo or Triple G.
Okay, here I've got all the people in the chat are saying, sorry, Paul. All the people and you in the chat, as you and Paul as well, was saying, why don't they make an offer to Eddie Hearn? Right? Has Eddie Hearn made an offer to them?
No, but they're the ones accusing.
No, so no one's made any offers. So no one's made any offers.
They're the ones accusing Eddie Hearn of running and ducking. I haven't heard Eddie Hearn accusing them of running and ducking. So what they're
calling him out.
Wait, let me get a sentence up.
Sorry.
You've got, by your account, and I don't actually totally disagree with you. Okay, you're saying it's the premium market. I'm saying it may be the premium market. We don't know. But you're saying it's the premium market. They've got the WBC champion. They're accusing the UK side of running, ducking, doing anything to avoid the fight. Why do they not make an offer? Have you ever heard a fighter accused of ducking before who hasn't been made an offer?
Have you ever heard of a fighter making an offer before they called the other fighter out?
Tom, that's a yes or a no. Have you ever heard of a fighter accusing another fighter of ducking when they haven't made an offer? Seriously, they're in the premium market, according to you.
Look, well, they are in the premium market. That's not even like, I don't know if you're trying to deny they're in the premium market. You're all just Billy Briggs.
They may be in the premium market. We don't know. But Tom, why? If they're in the premium market, the emphasis is on them to make the offer. Surely, according to your logic.
No, that's not at all. Look, the way this has happened is you've had some talkings between Eddie Hearn and Wilder's team about a fight with Dillian Whyte, and they said, we don't want to fight Dillian Whyte. We want to fight AJ. And they said, well, if you fight Dillian Whyte, you can fight AJ. And then they say, well, that to me sounds like an obstacle to getting the AJ fight to me. And Wilder calls out AJ and say, I want to fight you now. I don't want to fight Dillian Whyte. Okay, that's what's actually happened.
The chat want to know the answer to my question, Tom.
But why don't look? People get called out all the time. They say, I want to fight, right? And then you say, well, why didn't you send me an offer? It's like, well, I just fucking called you out. Are you supposed to supply an offer before you call someone out? Is that the logic we're following here? Is this the Eddie Hearn, Billy Britt logic we're following?
You're supposed to supply an offer before you accuse someone of running and ducking, right? I'm not saying you're supposed to.
Wait a second. No, wait. They said they would give him the fight if he fought Dillian. Did Eddie Hearn not say that to Shelley Frankel? Said he had an email, and Eddie didn't deny it after when your man came on and said it.
Yeah, something to that.
He said, if you fight Dillian Whyte, you get the fight, right? So Eddie Hearn has said, if you fight Dillian Whyte, and Deontay Wilder came back and says, I don't want to fight Dillian Whyte, I want to fight AJ, right?
So why doesn't Deontay Wilder?
So what's the problem with a fighter saying, I want to fight the other guy? What is his problem? He has to offer. He has to literally. Are you saying he has to fucking? Are you saying he has to offer him a contract before he can come out and say, I want to fight you? No. That's what it sounds like.
Tom, you're either choosing to miss the point or missing the point. It's not not calling him out. It's accusing him of running and ducking.
Yeah, well, think about it. Think about what happens a lot of times with these fighters. A fighter has Eddie Hearn. This does not seem like a ridiculous thing to me. Eddie Hearn has a prize fighter like AJ, right? And he doesn't want him to get beaten by the biggest puncher in the division. So he puts his B-class fighter and says, oh, you can fight him first. And it puts off that fight so he can make more money in the meantime. You see, meanwhile, the other guy wants to fight AJ.
I completely disagree with that. I think the way Eddie Hearn is thinking is if Deontay Wilder comes over, they have the whole fight with Dillian Whyte, they're all talking trash and everything. It gets built up here and that. And then later in the year, the AJ fight happens. It's a bigger fight. Everybody makes more money.
Guys. Well, here's one thing. Before you cut me off, I want to say one quick thing. Is all this argument that we're having, is the boxing voice stuff, all the calling out, is that building the fight? Because to me, this is what's building the fight, not fucking a fight with Dillian White.
Yeah. I think that's a fair point. It is building the fight, and I know you indicated you didn't like the boxing voice early, but I'm going to give them a bit of a shout out actually, because I thought that was quality content, and a lot of us, including myself, really enjoyed it. But guys, I must bring Jet in. Jet, I do apologise, mate. You've been waiting on the line for 45 minutes, and I haven't even said hello. So I hope you forgive me. What do you? Are you still with us after that?
Just about.
Sorry, Jet.
No worries.
Jet,
Jet,
remember whose side you're on, Jet.
Sorry.
I was going to start by asking you what you made of Wilder's performance, but perhaps that seems a bit redundant. Let me ask you, Jet, were you surprised that Iris couldn't answer the question?
I'm not commenting any further.
Jet, give us your take on Wilder's performance.
Decent. Nothing. I mean, you know, when he put his punches together, the 1-2 was decent, but still windmilling like hell. So yeah, not. We don't really learn anything new from this fight. I guess Stiverne was terrible. I guess that's the only thing you can say.
Okay, Jet, I wanted to ask you about the weight. The weight is a particularly interesting topic. Joshua came in heavy for his last fight. For me, he looked like he might gas. He looked a bit slow, a bit less athletic, a bit less plodding. Deontay Wilder's just come in light. He's looked as athletic, as mobile, as fast as I've ever seen him. You know, for me, there actually seems to be a correlation. Wilder's dropped a few pounds. His performances look even better. Joshua's put on even more. His performances have slightly stagnated. Yet Joshua seems to be under the impression that his weight advantage over Wilder, you know, is going to make him eat Wilder, if I've got the quote correct there. You know, is Joshua and his team running the risk of slightly oversimplifying this boxing game? You know, boxing isn't simply about who's got the biggest biceps. It's not simply a case that Wilder's 15 stone, Joshua's 18 stone, he's going to run through him. Do you think that's a real threat here?
Yeah, I think we've seen some of the you know, the top guys who come in lighter, they perform better. You know, Vlad performed better at a lighter weight. Tyson Fury, obviously, we know he has weight problems, but he performed significantly better at lighter weights. Joshua seemed a lot quicker when he was a lot more explosive. You know, less plodding. I think he seems a bit plodding when he's at this sort of 254 or over 250 mark. And Wilder's obviously come in. You know, I don't know the exact weight he weighed in on the weekend, but you know, he's weighed in light and he looks sharp. He looks, you know, when he throws out the jab, it's really, really snappy jab. When Joshua was throwing out the jab against Carlos Takam, it looked quite slow, quite ponderous. Sorry, and yeah, the weight does. You know, if you're Joshua with the stamina, you got to be concerned, or if you're a Joshua fan, or, you know, a part of his team, Eddie Hearn, anyone connected to AJ, they've got to be concerned with the stamina. You know, the stamina is a real problem. And I know Sky were trying to, you know, disregard it and saying he has a fantastic engine, but you know, it's there for everyone to see. His gas tank runs on empty after around 6 or 7. You know, that physique is not built for a boxing ring. And yeah, I think he may struggle against Wilder if Wilder can take his shots well. You know, it's all a if between those two. Who lands first? If this guy lands first, it all depends. It's not. There's no certainty in the fight with Joshua and Wilder.
I totally hear you, Jet. I've got to ask your comments on the ducking statements made by Deontay Wilder after the fight. You know, they seem to be indicating that Joshua's running scared. What's your take on that, mate?
Do you know what? I wouldn't say that, because with Joshua, I think he's shown a tendency to fight, anyone. I think he wants the big names. Maybe it's Eddie who's kind of holding him back. He knows he's making a ton of money on AJ, so maybe it's kind of a promotional standpoint, and it's more of a financial aspect that is stopping Eddie from putting him in that fight, because it's more there's more risk to it. I mean, I think you made a good point. It was either you or someone else a few weeks ago now, that AJ could fight a tomato can and sell out 50,000 or 60,000. People just want to see a highlight reel AJ knockout. So it's just it's difficult to say, but I don't think either is ducking. I don't think Wilder's ducking AJ. I don't think AJ's ducking Wilder. It will happen when it happens. Hopefully they get it on this coming year. But I don't think either are ducking each other.
I hear you. Okay, makes sense. What's your take on which market is bigger? Do you think the fight should be UK or US to make the most money?
That's a tough one. I mean, I was listening to the conversation. Believe me, I didn't fall asleep. But I don't really have an inkling as to which market may be bigger. The States could be bigger, but there's no guarantees on that. AJ's doing absolutely amazing in the UK in terms of profile and making a hell of a lot of money. So I'd say stick to the UK, only because I don't want to stay up till 4 a.m. to watch the fight. I prefer to watch it at primetime UK. But there's certainly arguments for both sides, one side or the other, to make both men money.
Yeah, I agree with everyone, I guess. I think Iris is certainly right that the US market has more potential. I think the UK market is more certainty for that fight if it happens next. But I can see arguments on both sides. But it's an interesting one. It really is. Okay, cool. Thank you, Jet. 220 guys live, watching us live. If you are one of them, thanks for joining. Appreciate you taking your time to watch us discuss this boxing action. Please do hit the thumbs up button. Guys, we've spent best part of an hour just on the Wilder fight. Let's talk about some of the other fights that happened last week. I wanted to start by raising Sean Porter. Now, Porter's a very flawed fighter, but for me, he's a guy who has some real excellence on the inside. And I genuinely believe a lot of these heavyweight contenders could really do with watching a bit of Sean Porter. I actually made a note that Dillian Whyte and Derek Chisora should really watch some Sean Porter footage. Because what those guys do is walk down a heavyweight and then really sort of fail to get their offense off on the inside and end up getting countered and having their opponent spin off and make room again. What Porter does is walk you down. He'll then position you using his physique into the ring, so you're kind of immobile, and he'll then use fast feet on the inside and pivot left and right to create angles. It's real effective inside work. He'll close down the ring, cut down the reins, position you, and then move from side to create the angles he needs to get his inside offense off. If Dillian Whyte could have adopted that approach with Robert Helenius, it wouldn't have been so painful. I really like Sean Porter. I think he's a great guy for the division. I think he's very interesting to watch, and I want to see him back in big fights. What did you guys make on that Adrian Granados fight? Just asking it to the whole panel if anyone wants to go first.
Well, I'll go. I thought he looked pretty good, Sean Porter, and I echo your words, Tom. I like Sean Porter. I thought he beat Keith Thurman, to be completely honest, and he a few people were saying that they thought this fight was close or whatever. This Granados fight, I don't know. I just don't know what they were watching. I thought I scored it, and I had it. I think I had it 8-4. To Porter. I thought he won it quite clearly. Porter's good. I mean, Granados landed a few shots in that, and his game as always. But Porter just, as you say, when he gets inside, he he's kind of like a different level, isn't he? On the inside, Sean Porter, he does things that I don't really see any other fighters doing on the inside. I mean, you know, maybe an early Ward used to do certain things. You know, younger Ward, certain things similar. But I don't think there's really anybody else like Sean Porter in boxing right now. I don't know if anybody else can think of anybody. Can anybody think of any other fighter? I mean, who's the guy Crawford for? Felix Diaz. Felix Diaz is similar, but not the same.
Maybe Jarrell Miller, but you kind of lose some of the athleticism with the size, I guess.
Yeah. True.
Yeah.
I liked it. I won't say too much more on it than that, but yeah, I like Sean Porter.
Yeah, definitely. Did anyone else happen to have any comments on that one?
I thought it was a decent performance from Porter, but he makes the same mistakes. He flies in. He doesn't really set up his shots well, and if he did that, I think he'd be a lot more effective. You know, just from that 3/4 range, possibly. I was listening to Ultra Tech, his long video today, and he said the exact same thing. I just thought if he sets up his shots a bit better, he'd be even more of a handful. He kind of just throws some looping overhand, Derek Chisora type right hand, and tries to force himself in. It works sometimes. Don't get me wrong, but against the top guys, it's not gonna always work. He needs a bit of variation there, but he's a solid operator at welterweight, and he's a handful for anyone at the weight. I do think obviously someone like Kell Brook, he did neutralize him. A guy who throws straight punches and can box a bit from range, give him a few different angles. Someone like Kell Brook. Maybe a Spence. I know he's not really on the Spence radar, and he said he's going for Thurman next. Won't be fighting again until the rematch happens. So decent performance, pretty good. Granados did himself well. He didn't disgrace himself or anything. He's performed well in his last couple of fights, Broner and Porter. So well done to him. Hopefully he gets another big fight soon at either 140 or 147.
Good stuff. Did anyone happen to watch Dominic Brazil versus Eric Molina? Being frank, I didn't, but understand Brazil is in line for a big fight. Rumours are either Deontay Wilder or Prince Charles Martin.
I saw it.
What's your take on that one?
Brazil looked all right. Molina looks like a fighter that's lost his balls. He looks scared, man. He's like, all he really did throughout the whole fight, the only thing he really did offensively, he was pretty good defensively for a bit. All he really did offensively all night was sort of like, he's really swinging sort of like single shots, like either at the body or the head, and then sort of like jump back out the way as if he was scared of getting hit. I don't know whether maybe the AJ beating or something has done something to him, but he's fighting like a scared fighter to me. It was an all right fight. It wasn't. It was nothing to write home about. Brazil looked half decent to me. Quite sharp. He looked in better shape than I've seen him before. I don't know if he is in better shape. He just looked a bit sharper. But again, it's kind of like if that ends up, like if he ends up fighting Wilder, like what? I don't understand how did the WBC sort of like explain this stuff away? I don't understand how a guy can be like second and then win, like, so Dillian White, I think he was in second, then he beats Robert Helenius, and then the guy at 9 and the guy at 12 or something end up in a final eliminator for the. I just don't understand how that shit works. I don't know how they can explain that.
Absolutely ludicrous. Yeah, absolutely ludicrous. I'm hoping it was some sort of mistake, and Eddie Hearn seems to have raised some sort of complaint, and the matter is now being reviewed. So hopefully it was some sort of sick mistake. But if Deontay Wilder had been mandated to fight Eric Molina next, having just gone through the Bermane-Stiverne rematch, to have to go through the Molina rematch really would have been pretty outrageous for the sport of boxing as a whole.
Well, yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think even Brazil is kind of like. I mean, it's better fight than Molina, certainly judging by.
Yes.
I mean, judging by what I saw at the weekend, if Wilder fought Molina again, I think he'd just do him in the first round again. I think Molina's, I don't know, shot, scared fighter. I don't know what. He just looked so bad. Did anybody else see that fight?
Not me, man.
Irish, did you see the Brazil Molina fight? Is Irish still there? He seems to be unmuted, but I can't hear him.
Did you ask me? Sorry.
Yeah, I was just asking you. Did you see the Brazil Molina fight?
No, I didn't see that or the Porter one. I had money on Porter to win by KO, and I haven't been able to find the fight since.
Yeah, Porter looked okay, but for whatever reason the KO never quite looked like it was on the cards, Tom. I would say. Let's move over and discuss the Eddie Hearn bill in Monaco. Let's start with Dimitri Bivol. I guess kind of similar to Deontay Wilder in the sense that he fought a massively overmatched opponent and won by completely devastating fashion, but kind of a fight where you don't learn too much just because he's not really tested in any tangible way. But we've got to say Bivol looks a very, very hot prospect. And with Andre, pound for pound #1, son of God, greatest of all time Ward, retiring from the division, and with Sergey Kovalev and Adonis Stevenson getting older day by day, you do wonder if Dimitri Bivol is the kind of guy who can make big moves at 175, guys.
But what about Lawrence Okoli? Oh no, is he? No, he's a cruiserweight.
Wrong division, mate. Yeah.
Yeah, Bivol is a serious, prospect. I think he's a standout amateur or something like that. So he had a decent win against Felix Valera. I think Valera's fighting. He's fighting on the Shabransky and Kovalev undercard. So that was a good win when he won his interim belt. He's had Cedric Agnew, I think he beat as well. He has, maybe 2-3 decent names on his resume. Bivol is a serious. He looks serious at 175. The shot he put Broadhurst out with, that was sickening. Broadhurst seemed unconscious for 20-30 seconds, and he needed to get up and regain his senses. That was sickening. I don't want to really see that again. But he could pick up 1 or 2 belts, I reckon. Kovalev versus Shabransky is for the WBO, so the IBF I think is vacant. But I think Beterbiev and another guy are fighting for it. So WBA and maybe you could unify. Maybe we'll see there.
Do you think Bivol will duck Bullioni and Burton?
Of course. Bullioni is the best in the division, mate.
There you go. He did look pretty good, though. Tom, I've got a vague recollection of you shouting out Bivol's name 6-12 months ago, mate.
I said him before, and all you guys sneered at me. Telling you. He was good, but God, that Australian guy was useless. He looked like a Z-list Martin Murray in there. So he's a talent, but you can't tell from any of the fights he's been in what he's going to be, how good he is. Until you put him in there with somebody decent. Yeah,
totally agree. He looks to the eye test to be a top draw talent, but really looking forward to seeing you in some meaningful fights. Let's talk the other cards on the bill. The other fights on the bill, even. I guess we've got to start with Chisora Kabayel. Chisora disappoints again, makes the same mistakes as usual, comes in too heavy, awful corner, no Don Charles. Kabayel, for me, actually looked quite handy. He's someone I'd like to see fight again. He had a lot of skill for me. What did you guys make of that?
He fought the fight that Huey fought against Parker. He's got a good engine.
The Furies, yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't as negative as Huey. He had more going forward about him. He doesn't have much power, I don't think. But, Derek's got a good chin. I don't know, apart from Hayes, the only person ever to drop Derek, as far as I can remember. But so we'll see how he does up against other ones. But, a good performance. I thought he won at 8-4. I thought the cards were way too close. But, he's a decent heavyweight. What age is he?
25? 25, yeah.
Yeah, like it was very surprising to see him be able to do that on his back foot for the 12 rounds, wasn't it? Because he looked a bit of a unit.
Yeah. He was very, very light on his feet. He had, clearly not the most natural of athletes, but, had a real understanding of, like, footwork and angles and stuff, I thought.
Yeah, we'll see what he does next.
A lot of people calling for that Dillian White fight. I suspect Eddie Hearn will keep Dillian White a million miles away from him. What about Chisora? Do we expect to see Chisora matched up against the likes of Joe Joyce, Nathan Gorman, Daniel Dubois? Is that his route to earning a few quid out of the game at this point?
Most likely.
Yeah.
Hard to see him coming back there. Awful scorecards for me. I think Chisora 3 rounds, maybe 4 rounds, but 6 rounds. Wow. Really, really outrageous scorecards for my money there. Scott Quigg, Jamie McDonnell. Let's go Scott Quigg. Does anyone have any comments to make on Scott Quigg? For me, regressing fighter, if anything.
It's hard to even know if he's regressing. Because when he was with Joe Gallagher, all he used to do was kind of not fight for a while. You know what I mean? And then turn it on. And it's like now he just goes balls to the wall from the start. Thing is, these are low-level fighters. He might, he said himself in the post-fight interview that, he just kind of wanted a scrap and that he didn't do what he was doing in the gym. And I can believe that because, how was that? Is that like a final eliminator or something for the WBA or something like that? Did I hear that?
Correct, yeah.
How does that guy, where's that guy from? Was he Hungarian or?
Ukrainian,
I don't know. How can he be a final eliminator for anything? He was a pretty poor fighter, I thought. Just not a great fight, and I think Scott Quigg should retire. I think he's punch drunk.
Wow. I think retiring is a bit strong. Of all the fighters out there to retire, I wouldn't say Scott Quigg should be one of them, but he certainly
he's like some. But like some fighters can't take the punishment like other fighters, and as far as I can see, when I listen to him talking, he's punch drunk.
I don't mean about Scott Quigg. I don't think he's ever been the most eloquent of gentlemen.
But no, he's getting worse. Like, I think he's getting a lot worse. And, what is he, 28 or something like that? Another 5 or 6 years of getting hit in the head and sparring. I think he should retire for his health. He's going to be... He is not going to be in good nick by the time he's 45.
Yeah, he's got an offensive style, and Freddie Roach has certainly not taught him any Mayweather defense. Let's put it that way.
But I don't think Freddie Roach is telling him to do that. I think that's him going in. No, this guy is low level and just wants to scrap. You know, very much is a good coach. You know.
Yeah. Delboy makes the comment in the chat. James DeGale sounded a bit worse now. I actually did notice that in James DeGale's recent set of interviews, actually. I thought he sounded... again, James DeGale is never someone who's ignorant of presenters throughout his career. But I did myself pick up on that. I felt there was some deterioration there, but perhaps that was just a particularly bad day he was caught on. But boxing's a very, very dangerous sport. And, you know, clearly hard fights can take something out of a person. But yeah, Scott Quigg, I believe he's got a mandatory challenge now. I think, is it against the Santa Cruz Abner Mares winner, Jet?
Yeah, it's against the winner because obviously they hold the regular and super belt respectively. So yeah, against the winner of that. I think that's a bad style matchup because I think Santa Cruz will probably beat Mares again. I think that's a really bad style matchup. I think, you know, probably, if anything, he should just go in with Oscar Valdez because Russell will probably school him. Selby, I think, you know, might school him a little bit as well. So Oscar Valdez, he can have a bit of a tear up with him, and if he wants to go in there and just punch, you know, just go for a power punches, then Oscar Valdez is your guy because you can catch him a little bit. Oscar Valdez, I probably picked to win, but he's got a better chance there than he has against Santa Cruz, who'll be throwing 100 punches probably around.
He's a bit of a puncher though, Valdez. Valdez might knock him out.
Yeah, could do.
I think
could do.
them all. Yeah, from what I think, you know, maybe from memory, he earned very good money against Carl Frampton. He can get $500,000 or whatever it is out of Santa Cruz. You know, perhaps maybe he can start considering his options and, you know, think about life after boxing, I guess. But I don't see him beating any of them guys.
Just wanted to say about the DeGale thing, I noticed that in James DeGale as well. I think he took a lot of punishment in his last two fights. And I think he's slightly punch drunk now as well.
Yeah, the Jack fight, he took a lot of punishment in particularly, didn't he?
He really did, yeah. Like, James DeGale should have one or two fights and get out.
I thought it was really noticeable, actually. And I actually put it down to... I just put it down as like a bit of an anomaly, really. But seeing as there's all of you guys picking up on it, you know, perhaps it's a real concern. You know, Scott Quigg, James DeGale, these are not old guys. You know, these are not guys who've had 50, 60 fights. These are not guys who've been knocked out 10 times. You know, these are guys who have had hard fights at the top level. And I hope it doesn't take its toll. Moving on, Jamie McDonnell. Disappointing fight, a fight that was really starting to heat up. McDonnell sustained a very, very bad cut. McDonnell's team very disappointed they didn't get the opportunity to work on the cut in the corner. Did anyone think the stoppage was too early?
The ref was looking to stop it. So,
yeah,
I think the ref was scared by the amount of blood jet.
Yeah.
Yeah, he stopped it, 3 times or something like that? So he was looking he was looking to stop it, so makes no difference. Jamie will probably move up, and I watched his interview today. He said he doesn't actually know who the champions are apart from Rigondeaux. So maybe Ray Vargas. Obviously, Ray Vargas beat his brother, Gavin McDonnell. So there's not really any money at super bantamweight. So we'll see how he does there, I guess. Probably just wants to win a world title.
Yeah. Absolutely. Harlem Eubank, guys, a really questionable performance, and he was very, very lucky to escape with the win. You know, had that knockdown in the first round been called, maybe he wouldn't have done.
I think he was just really, really eager, wasn't he? I think Guy's first fight, you know, their debut fight. Was it his debut fight? Was it his first fight?
It was his third fight, I think.
Oh, was it? Okay. I thought it was his first fight. Okay. Yeah, he just seemed overeager. You know, people just expect something because his name's Eubank. I mean, you know, he's just a fighter like anybody else, isn't he? And yeah, as you say, that I mean, how they didn't rule that a knockdown, I just have no idea whatsoever. It reminded me of Bellew, Makabu. Bellew did the same thing, didn't he? Sort of like did like a backwards roll and sort of like got up, but it's still a fucking knockdown. He hit the deck. I mean, it was really strange, really strange. Or not strange if you believe in high level corruption in boxing, which I do. I think there's loads of it going on. I think there's a hell of a lot of it going on in the States with the Wilder WBC situation at the minute. But there you go. I digress. Yeah.
Yeah, but another week in boxing and more questionable scoring. Harlem Eubank and Derek Chisora. Chisora got very favourable scoring, even though he was still on the wrong side of the decision. Harlem Eubank, I think one of the judges had it 40-37. Crazy. But anyway, this is well-established news. Guys, anyone got any comments further to add on any of last week's boxing before we move it on?
Win that fight though, because I think he just got confused halfway through that first round. He thought he was doing gymnastics more, and he did, a few somersaults in a row. Just bad luck that a punch landed right before he decided to do it.
Yeah, I think someone said in the chat, how was Eubank overeager? It was only a 4-round fight. I think that's kind of what Paul meant when he was saying that. The guy was like a bundle of energy, charging all over the ring. Huge amount of wasted movement, huge amount of needless athletic, stylistic stuff. And, so busy looking to be like explosive and dominant and just totally neglecting getting punched straight in the face, which is probably what we were referring to. But anyway, we'll move it on. Guys, substantial rumours of Joseph Parker versus Lucas Brown to take place Q1 of next year. I really, really like this fight. I understand that an announcement may be imminent for Parker's next fight and could well be the Lucas Brown fight, which would tie in with why he was in a position to reject the Dillian White matchup. What's your take on this fight if it were to be made? Do you like it, and how competitive do you see it? Paul, you're a Lucas Brown man, aren't you, from memory?
Not exactly. No, no. I was just the one that was sort of like saying after the first failed PED test that we shouldn't jump to conclusions, given that he'd passed the PED test before he'd gone over to fight Chagayev. And that was actually afterwards, which kind of like would make no sense to take no PEDs all the way through your training camp and then take PEDs like on the week of the fight or after the fight. But I mean, I was kind of like I kind of thought that the Parker AJ fight might get made, but it's now looking more likely that this is going to get made. I mean, it's a decent fight. Just worry about whether, because obviously Brown's now failed another PED test after that. What happened with him? Did he not get banned or what?
I don't know. I don't know what happened there. I don't believe he is currently ranked by the WBO, so I don't know how they could make the fight, but it seems that that's a fight being talked about. Lucas Brown has actually come back, though. He's had a return fight against journeyman opposition, so yeah, whether he was banned or not, he's certainly back.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it just strikes me as weird how certain fighters seem to be able to get away with multiple sort of like failed tests, and other fighters seem to sort of like get banned for like a year or more or whatever. It just seems weird to me. Yeah, it's a decent fight. I think Parker would have too much for Lucas Brown, to be completely honest. But it's a decent fight. It's certainly a better fight than it's definitely a better fight than the one we've seen at the weekend. I think Lucas Brown is going to offer quite a bit more than Stavern offered to Wilder. So, yeah, I mean, look, Parker, you can't really fault Parker, because since winning that title, he's fought decent opposition. You know, you can't really fault him on that. He's had a few questionable performances. Seemed to be totally out of ideas of how to deal with Hughie Fury. And I don't know. He hasn't looked great for me, but I think he probably will have just a little bit too much for Lucas Brown. But still, good fight. Good fight.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else got any comments on that? Okay, let's move it on. I wanted to ask you about the return. What are you cackling at, Irish Tom?
I just like how nobody's willing to talk.
I know. Well, I'm not gonna force you guys. Joe Joyce's second fight announced. Tom Little going to be on the undercard of David Haye versus Tony Bellew rematch. What do people make of Tom Little as a second opponent?
He's a good opponent, I think. You know, another English level type fighter. You know, what's not to like about it? He'll splay him in half. Yes. Do you think that Little's movement and boxing pedigree can cause Joyce problems, or do you really see it as a one-sided fight? Look, I must admit I haven't seen any of Tom Little, so all I am just going on is Joe Joyce's ability. So, you know, I can't really comment. I like Tom Little. I think he's a stylish fighter who's really underperformed, but I think he's got good skills and is taking it a bit more seriously and getting in some good nick now. And I think he could pose a challenge. You know, Joyce obviously is going to be a favourite, and you can't pick against him. But I quite like the fight. Anyone else? What do people think about the return of Tyson Fury? You know, we've had the return of Tyson Fury 5 or 6 times, and realistically, you know, I kind of said that I was going to stop talking about Tyson Fury's return because it was getting frustrating, him retiring and then unretiring every 3 months. But his return seems to be gathering just a little bit more momentum. The signs seem to be much more positive than they've been in the past. Obviously, there's still the issue of his quite considerable size, which will have to be addressed. But what do you guys think? Do you believe that he will be back in the first half of next year?
I don't know if he'll be back in the first half of next year, but I do think he'll be back now. I saw an interview with him recently, and his body language was totally different to probably the last 4 or 5 interviews I've seen of him. And here's the thing: look, boxing's a business, and when it comes to, you know, British Boxing Board of Control, the issues he's had, the legal issues he's had, and whatnot. Things like that have a habit of clearing themselves up when there's big money to be made for everybody involved, you know, and there's more money to be made in British heavyweight boxing with Tyson Fury in the picture than there is without him. AJ versus Fury would be huge, would be absolutely huge, and I just think there's too much money there to be made for the powers that be, shall we say, to not sort of like make it happen, you know. And he does seem motivated again. So I'm more optimistic than I was at one stage. And I hope he does. He also called into that show that we were talking about. was giving Eddie Hearn a bit of stick, and kind of seemed to be very pally with Deontay Wilder, which was kind of strange to hear. But yeah, I think he probably will. I think he probably will come back. Whether it'll be at the start of the year, I don't know. I think I think the weight loss issue might be a bit much. I don't see Tyson Fury as somebody that's going to train through Christmas, shall we say? I think probably the middle or perhaps even more likely the end of next year would be more likely.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I mean, Fury has shown ability to lose a lot of weight quickly in the past, but it can't get any easier as you get older. I know he's not like too old, but his lifestyle is not going to help in terms of getting old overnight, to use that phrase. Jet, Iris, anything more to add on Mr. Fury and his continuing returning saga?
Fingers crossed it actually does happen this time.
Let's hope so, hey? Let's hope so.
I think Tyson's just waiting for the WBC to create a super duper heavyweight division. It's like 25 stone plus.
Yeah, I don't think he'd be beatable. I think he'd be completely unbeatable at that size, because he still looks pretty handy on the pads at 25 stone. Believe it or not.
Did you hear what AJ said he would do to Deontay Wilder when he heard he was like 16 stone?
Yeah, we covered that earlier, mate. You must have been watching something on TV or something.
I know, yeah. He said he'd eat him, but can you imagine what Tyson Fury would do to him?
Tyson Fury. Eat him for breakfast.
Eat him, literally.
Yeah. Certainly we hope he comes back. Huge fan of Tyson Fury, and whether you love him or hate him, he certainly adds a huge amount of interest to the division and will make these big fights even bigger. So really do hope so, Tyson. Not that you'll be watching. Anyway, let's move on and talk about next week's boxing. Eddie Hearn launching Matchroom in the USA with his inaugural show in New York, headlined by Daniel Jacobs versus Luis Cuba Arias. Now, I'll be completely frank and say I have seen extremely limited footage of Luis Arias. Has anyone on the panel done a better job of researching him than myself?
Nope.
Has anyone seen him at all?
No, I've never seen him.
I know he's like 6'4" or something like that.
I've never even heard of him.
That's what I heard.
BoxRec has him at 5'11". He's unbeaten in 18 and 0. Being frank,
there was a website that said he was 6'4", so obviously they've got their facts wrong.
Yeah, I've seen him with Jacobs in the face-off. I didn't think he looked bigger than Jacobs. But who knows? I don't recognise too many, if any, of his previous victims. So, yeah, I mean, I think he was a Floyd Mayweather fighter for large portions of his career, but they had somewhat acrimonious split. But, yeah, Jacobs, obviously the home fighter. Daniel Jacobs expected to win. Will be interesting to see what Eddie Hearn does with him next. I would say that there's actually a potentially more interesting fight on the undercard, especially for us heavyweight fans. Irish Tom's boy, Jarrell Big Baby Miller, is taking on Marius Wok. Irish, from memory, you weren't overly sold on this fight. You thought it was quite easy work for Miller.
Yeah, like I don't think what has Wok done in living memory. You know, it's a long time since he
beat Erkan Teper recently.
Yeah, but like, what is Erkan Teper without his gills full of PEDs?
Yeah, true.
Hamer bet Erkan Teper. And Hamer is not up to much. I think Jarrell Miller I don't think he'll get the stoppage unless his chin is cracked. But I just think he'll roll on through him.
It'd be interesting if it's over 12 rounds, if Jarrell Miller has to fight for 12 rounds. Because, at his size, interesting to see what he weighs in at as well. But it'd be interesting. I know Jarrell Miller's always shown a good engine, but let's see what it's like over 12 against. I'm not saying Wok's going to beat him, not by any stretch, but will be an interesting test if it does go 12.
Yeah, but I think Jarrell Miller is one of those guys who's just a natural athlete. I think he looks like he has that kind of dynamism in him to go for 12. But I also don't think he's going to come in much lighter. Because, you know, even though he was 296 pounds or whatever the fucker was, like, that is just colossal. That's 21 stone. He came in the last time. There wasn't much fat on him. You know, there was more fat on Derek Chisora against Caballel. A lot more than there was on him when he fought Washington. He's just just huge. You know, he's just one of those. You know, he's like one of these. One of these islanders who plays like in centre rugby. You know, these Pacific Island guys. He just has that type of build. It's just enormous, and I don't think he'll ever get down to 270 or anything like that.
Yeah, interesting. It'll be really, really interesting to see how he gets on the weekend. For me, it's actually a more interesting fight than the main event. But then again, I would say that having not done my research on Daniel Jacobs' opponent. Josh Taylor, Tom, quite a few of your big favourite fighters. Josh Taylor fighting Miguel Vasquez. Fight that's gone a little bit under the radar, I must say. I think this is a potential banana skin, you know. I'm not saying I'm picking Taylor to get beat, not saying that by a long stretch, but I think this is a fight where he could be made to look average in spots. You know, I think Miguel Vasquez is a very slippery operator who is a real horrible style to fight. I'm sure Jet's got an opinion on this one.
Yeah, like, I think I don't know if I've ever seen Vasquez, so I can't comment on the style, but it has kind of gone under the radar. You know, the last fight was great. Like, you know, for the hardcores, you know, the last fight he had was maybe the fight of the year. You know, that kind of, grudge match. It was a great fight, but so this one is always going to not live up to that. But you know, he is an elite boxer, Josh Taylor. You know, he's world level. You know, I think he'll waltz into a title now that they're all freed up. But with regards to this fight, I might have seen Vasquez, but I can't remember, so I really don't know what to expect of it.
He fought Timothy Bradley and he's fought Canelo as well. UDs lost by UDs to both of them, I think. But he's durable. He's never been knocked out.
Yeah, beat Bradis Prescott, beat Denis Safikov. Some real good fights. I actually think he's better than some of the existing world champions.
I think he's the best guy that Taylor will have faced. Definitely, he's way better than O'Hara Davis. O'Hara Davis is useless. I think O'Hara Davis is hugely overrated. His feet look like they've been planted and they've been stuck in mud, and he can't actually remove them. Like he's got cement wellies on or something. And he's just got a big punch. If he can't land a big punch, there's nothing else he can do.
He's a better fighter than O'Hara Davis. He's probably a less dangerous fighter than O'Hara Davies. He's a guy who's been operating at lower weight classes, and even there, he's got a low KO ratio. I think this is the toughest fight of Josh Taylor's. The way I view Miguel Vasquez is like an incredibly rangy, negative, awkward, slippery fighter. Yeah. I don't think the upset is completely off the cards here.
I don't think it's completely off the cards. I don't think he'll beat him. I think I don't think it's off the cards, but I don't think he'll beat him. I think Josh Taylor will have probably too much for him on the inside, because I don't think Vasquez likes in the Timothy Bradley fight. Whenever I can remember it clearly, when Timothy Bradley ever got inside, he looked terrible. He looked really, really uncomfortable, and the same with Canelo. He didn't like body work either. And I think Josh Taylor is probably the kind of fighter that could sort of like be his kryptonite, if you like. But I do think it'll be impressive if he stops him, given that nobody else has stopped him, and he has fought some pretty decent guys. It's a decent fight. He's definitely better than than O'Hara Davis. I agree he's less dangerous. He hasn't got the punch of O'Hara Davis, but as an overall fighter, he's a much better fighter than O'Hara Davis.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not saying that I'd pick him to beat Taylor, but I don't completely rule out the upset. He actually took Canelo to a split decision on his debut when he was 19 years old. So he's got pedigree from the very, very first fight on his resume. And what's he had? He had 44 fights for Canelo twice, Tim Bradley, Safikov, Mickey Bay. He's mixed it at a real, real high level. I remember at some point, I think he was when Ricky Burns was with Frank. I think he was scheduled to face Ricky Burns at the time, what was a big unification fight, but for some reason it never happened. Let's bring Jet in. Jet, I did try and shoot over to you. He developed a regional Irish accent at the time, so let's bring you back in. What's your thoughts on this matchup?
Well, I think it's a good matchup.
I had to refer to Uncle Irish. No, take it away, Irish. Take it away, Uncle.
I'm only joking, Jed. Fire ahead.
Sorry, what was the question?
What's your take on Vasquez, mate? Stylistically, how's it going to go?
Yeah, he's a awkward customer. He's decent. He's good at a certain level, but I think he's way past his best. Taylor for me is he's close to world level, if not world level already. I know Crawford's obviously moved up, so he should get a shot at one of the belts. I think he holds the WBC silver now, so he should be pretty high in the rankings. So he should get a shot at that belt soon. They're both good fighters. I just think Taylor has a higher upside and he's younger, fresher. He's an overall more complete fighter than Miguel Vasquez. Vasquez will make it tricky at times. I think he'll be a lot cuter than any of Josh Taylor's previous opponents. But I think Josh Taylor should win probably by UD. Fairly comfortable, close but competitive at the same time. 8-4, something like that, or 9-3 or something like that.
Is this for the silver title? Did you say this might get a shot at the silver title there, Jet?
No, he already holds the silver title because O'Hara Davis held it, and obviously, they think he holds a Commonwealth belt. I'm not sure if he's vacated that though, and obviously the WBC silver.
Yeah, silver belt is on the line, so it is technically a defense of that minor title. Jet, when we've got you on, let's stick with the UK scene. Let me ask you about your prediction for Liam Smith versus Liam Williams 2. How do you see that fight going in the rematch?
Oh, I'm really looking forward to the fight, man. First fight was a bit very inconclusive. Obviously the headbutt and Smith missing weight and the WBO interim and that sort of stuff. There's a lot of different factors in the first fight. The second fight, I'd be inclined to go with Liam Smith. I'll be honest. I think Liam Williams, by his own admission, said he got gassed after the 6th round, and that does not bode well if you're Liam Smith, who punches quite well to the body. And he, he's going to bring the pressure, especially in the second half of the fight. I think, Liam Smith will probably wear him down and stop him in the second half of the fight, kind of rounds 10, 11, 12, basically a late stoppage. Williams, he'll be in the fight. He might be winning up until the later rounds, but I think he has a tendency to get caught up in a brawl. He done it with Gary Corcoran. And he done it with Liam Smith in the last fight, and he really played into Liam Smith's hands. So probably not the most popular pick, but Liam Smith to win by a late stoppage.
Yeah, I'm with Liam Smith. I've put a video up on the channel already, which is up with a sort of prediction on that. And yet my prediction is Liam Smith, basically along very, very similar lines to yourself. So 2 Liam Smiths. I know my man Rob in the chat is going Liam Williams. He thinks that people are putting too much hype around the fact that Williams gassed. You know, for his perspective, it was more a case that Williams took a headbutt, and that was the turn of the fight. What about Paul? What's your take on it, mate?
Who was it in the chat that said that?
Rob.
Shout out Rob, man. Yeah, I completely agree. I think that headbutt was the turning point of the fight. I thought it was a deliberate headbutt. I thought that Liam Williams was outboxing Liam Smith handily at that point. I understand the point about the gassing out and stuff, but seen a bit of footage of him lately. He looks really good, and I saw an interview with him. He was talking about having addressed some of that stuff. I think he might have switched one of his team or something, conditioning or whatever it might be. I just think he's a better fighter. I think he's a better fighter than Liam Smith, and I think Liam Smith. I thought that was a bit of a desperate move, that headbutt. I really did think. I mean, I'm not one of these guys that always thinks a headbutt is deliberate. I thought that was a deliberate headbutt, and that's a desperate move when you deliberately come up like that with your head. I just think Williams will beat him.
Okay, so we're 2-1 there. Irish, you Liam Smith or Liam Williams?
I'm going Liam Williams. Agree with Paul. He was winning that fight cleanly until he got headbutted and cut, and then, you know, the fight got stopped. The scorecards were all wrong. Liam Williams was winning that fight easy. I think if there's not, you know, that was a desperation headbutt. There's not a headbutt again. I don't think he'll get away with it the next time. And hopefully Liam Williams' corner won't mess up, because he should have won that one on points. He should have been stopped by the doctor, and he should have won that on points. Gone to the scorecards, he would have won.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Do you? I kind of have the logic that Liam Williams was certainly up, but I kind of have the logic that Smith was coming strong. And had the fight been allowed to continue, had the headbutt maybe not occurred, had the cut not occurred, Liam Smith had quite a high chance of getting to Liam Williams in the last couple of rounds. Do you think that that's been overstated, Paul and Tom?
Yeah, like, I think it's overstated because, you know, sometimes fighters, they get their second wind. And, you know, I do think that Liam Williams was he was in that trough period. He also got a headbutt and got his eye cut. But, you know, often you see fighters, you know, they're 5 or 6 rounds up. They take a round or two off, or they look like they're flagging, and then a couple of rounds later, you know, they get that second win. So I think it's a good competitive fight, but I think, you know, I think Williams should win it. We'll see if he's mentally tough enough to win it. And I think if he doesn't win it, it'll be a matter of his head getting in the way. You know, it'll be his own doubts, but he certainly has the skills, and I think he should have the stamina. We'll just see whether he'll put it together.
He does certainly have the skills. I think Smith has advantages in experience and advantages in size, and I think he may have an advantage in temperament and an advantage in stamina. And he's a very good body puncher who builds pressure well. But Williams does have the skills. And if Williams is mega disciplined and really learns from his mistakes, and if he just sticks to boxing fundamentals, I think he can scrape through. But fundamentally, I think that he's a guy whose temperament is a big negative. And I because of that, I'm against him in the fight.
I think, because, you know, if you'd have looked at, say the AJ Klitschko fight and say that fight had have stopped on cuts, was it the 5th round that it was the 5th round, wasn't it? AJ dropped Klitschko, and then Klitschko nearly had him out towards the end of the fight. Had that have happened at the end of that round, yeah, most people would say, fucking AJ would have gassed. He would have been out of there. You know, like, if you saw the way AJ was towards the end of that round, I was convinced that fight was over at that point. I thought there's no possible way he's recovering. and he did. And so, you know, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure it would have, you know, without the headbutt and whatnot. I'm not so sure he wouldn't have just got a second wind and continue to outbox him, because while Smith was coming back into the fight, he was coming on strong. I don't think it was too. It wasn't to the extent like he didn't. It wasn't like the AJ fight where he was like, you know, Williams didn't have Williams nearly out on his feet or anything like that, you know.
Yeah, true. It's a really interesting fight. I made quite a lot of parallels with the Frost Grove setup, and I don't think I'm the only one to draw those comparisons, but very, very much looking forward to it, definitely. Let's talk on that undercard. So it's a bill in Newcastle. Frank Warren did say that wasn't ideal having it in Newcastle, bearing in mind you've got a Scouser and a Welsh guy. You got Thomas Patrick Ward versus Sean Davis for the British. Josh Lever versus Glenn Foote for the IBF East West Europe, whatever that is. Nathan Gorman versus Mohamed Saltby in the heavyweight division for the vacant WBC International Silver title. Mark Heffron versus Lewis Taylor, and then a few prospects. I'll just say I'm looking forward to seeing Nathan Gorman. I'm a huge fan of Nathan Gorman. I think he's got a real upside. I think he could make a splash at world scene. I really do. I believe, and apologies if I'm wrong, he was initially scheduled to fight Nick Webb on this bill, and that is a fight that I really, really wanted to see. I think Gorman would have won, but I'm disappointed it's not happening. Mohamed Saltby is a guy I don't know. He's 13-0 with 8 knockouts. He hasn't been in with anyone of any note whatsoever. In fact, his opponents have had losing records. So we don't really know what kind of threat he's going to pose. But I, for one, am very, very interested in the Nathan Gorman journey, and we'll be looking to check out that fight. Guys on the panel, anyone particularly intrigued by any of those undercard fights?
The Davis versus Ward fight is a fairly decent fight, fairly good fight.
Davis versus Ward?
Yeah.
Is Ward one to follow, Jet?
He's unbeaten. He beat, who did he beat? Jazza Dickens. He beat Jazza Dickens, I think, last time out. He's a handy operator at British level. He's not too bad. Sean Davis obviously lost to, was it Gamal Yafai, I think?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
So, not the worst fight. It's a solid British level fight, so that might be one to look out for. Leather versus Foote as well might be a decent fight as well. So,
have you seen any of Lever?
Little bits and pieces. He seems handy. Seems pretty good. I've also heard other people who've seen him spar live and that sort of stuff. So they've said he's fairly good, so he's one to keep an eye out on. So, yeah,
good stuff. Guys, any further comments on any additional fights that I may or may not have missed for this weekend? In that case, let us move down the agenda. We have actually finished our agenda, which was interesting. We spent an hour 15 on last week's fights, and I was keen to move it on. So we covered everything. We've actually finished early. Let me go around the panel and see if anyone else has got anything further to add. Paul, any further comments from yourself, sir?
I just wanted my research earlier to not go sort of like not be in vain, and so I just had a few facts for the people that are sort of like trying to say that fucking AJ's ducking Wilder and whatnot. AJ had 20 fights now, so obviously it was his 19th fight. He fought Klitschko. In Deontay Wilder's 19th fight, he fought David Long on an 8-rounder. I think it was in Cancun. His 20th fight, Marlon Hayes. His 21st fight, Jesse Ottomans. And in his 28th fight, he stepped up and fought a 42-year-old Audley Harrison. And it might also be just good to note that in his 32nd fight, the fight before Stavern, he fought none other than Jason Gavin. For those who are kind of like AJ should be moving quicker, he should be doing more than he's doing, and what blah blah blah. He's already fought better opposition than Wilder, and he's had half the fight. So let's just to put things into a little bit of perspective there.
Well, sorry, was that Eddie Hearn there we had on the call, or was that Paul? Like, it's such an irrelevant thing. It's so irrelevant.
It's not irrelevant.
They're both world champions. It's totally irrelevant.
Why is it
what rate they developed at? It's totally irrelevant. It's irrelevant that one fella had a shit fight in his 6th and another fella had a good fight in his 11th. It's irrelevant. They're both world titleists.
It's not irrelevant.
They're number 1 versus number 2. It's completely irrelevant what they had in their 20th fight or their 15th fight. They're both world champions. They're 1 and 2 in a division. There's nothing else relevant.
Well, I tell you what's relevant, Tom, is that Shelley Finkel sitting there going, well, why don't you make the fight? And yet when Wilder won the title in his 33rd fight, he made a public statement to say Wilder's just a baby. He's not looking to unify yet. Don't put pressure on him. And yet AJ in his 20th fight, they're all going, well, why won't he fight him? Why won't he fight him next? And like 6 months' time is not quick enough and blah, blah, blah. I just think it's a double standard and people need to...
It's not a double standard.
Of course it is.
Because you're not a double standard because you're not comparing like with like. You know, look what happened when Joshua won the Charles Martin fight. Eddie Hearn and Joshua said similar things. We're going to defend it a couple of times before we go and unify. You know, they said exactly the same type of things as Wilder did then. So, like, compare them two things. Don't compare now with the different thing. They're both champions. They both have had 5 defenses or whatever it is now. They're 1 and 2 in the world. What rate of development they had or whatever is irrelevant. They're both 1 and 2 in their division. The fight's trying to be made.
I don't think it's irrelevant. I think the fight should be made, but I don't think it's irrelevant. I think people should take it into consideration when they're trying to say that, you know, one fighter is not moving quickly enough for everybody. You know, like I think for that purposes is relevant.
You know, like, I don't think AJ is ducking Wilder. Like, so let me get that straight. Some of the people like on the show, on the comments, and they think I don't like AJ. I really like AJ. He's an exciting fighter, right? I don't think AJ is ducking Deontay Wilder. I'll state that now. Categorically, do not think it. Do I think members of Joshua's team are trying to put back that fight? I would say absolutely. And I think the evidence is in. When Deontay Wilder gives out about AJ is ducking me, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like he's saying Joshua's team are ducking him because his contact is with Eddie Hearn. It's not with Joshua. So I think for him to say someone's ducking me if his team is trying to duck, I think it's a fair... I don't know. We're getting into semantics about whether Joshua's ducking or not. I don't think Joshua's ducking, but I think Eddie Hearn doesn't want that fight next. I think he's put barriers to it by trying to get him to fight Dillian White and then giving him the Joshua fight.
I think like 2 years ago, a year ago, we were all saying the same thing about Klitschko. I can remember sitting here on this very podcast with all of us saying there's no way he's going to feed AJ to Klitschko. There's no way the Klitschko fight's going to happen. Personally, I think if the Klitschko fight wasn't too much for AJ, I don't think they would think Deontay Wilder's too much for AJ. I think Klitschko was a much better fighter and was just as dangerous even at 41. And fundamentally, a better fighter.
You know, I think Klitschko had been schooled and is 2 years out, but I think the risk reward was different then. And I think the thing is as well now is, you know, gossip. I was getting slagged so much in the comment section when I wouldn't answer a question. What was that question I wouldn't answer? Let me see if I can be clear about it. No, seriously. Okay. I want to know. I want to actually answer it.
Let's see if we can get a yes or a no.
No, because okay, well, sometimes a yes or a no is not the right answer to a question because there's more to it. Because you can shoehorn somebody into saying things that doesn't answer it fully.
Here's my point, Tom, and I'll come to the question. My point is, you've made two arguments in separate conversations, and my take is that your two arguments actually clash. So your argument one is that the US market is undisputedly the biggest market by a long way. In a second conversation, we were talking about Deontay Wilder's comments that Joshua is ducking and running. Now, my comment is, if, according to your logic, Deontay Wilder is the home fighter in the territory that has by far the biggest market, should he not have at least made an offer to Anthony Joshua and Team Joshua before accusing him of running and ducking?
Like, I don't think that. No, I don't think he should. Honestly, I don't think. And it's not a duck of the thing. I think Deontay Wilder, when he says AJ's ducking me, he means AJ's team is ducking him. And the fact that who puts in the offer first is that formal negotiations obviously hadn't started. You know, informal negotiations had started because, you know, they obviously had, because they said, we'll offer you White, and they said, we don't want White, we want AJ. And they said, well, if you fight White, we'll give you AJ. So obviously negotiations had started, you know. The fact that an offer hadn't come through, hadn't been formally offered yet, it's neither here nor there in the greater scheme of how boxing is done. Fighter knocks out a guy, they call a guy out, and they accuse him of ducking him. Who cares? Half the time people accuse each other, duck each other. It's all bullshit. But the fact is that it's not like before you accuse someone of ducking, you have to send them over a contract before that. You know, like, to me, that's just kind of trying to put very high fucking legalese things before you can actually call a guy out. You know, we're fans. When Tyson Fury went over and called out Deontay Wilder in the stage of thing, we didn't say, oh, God, I hope he's offered him a contract before he went over and said that. You know, that's not how it works. They're just fucking calling each other out, and they're causing some hype in the scene. We want the fight. We don't want it later.
The implication of the phrase running and ducking would suggest that Wilder's done what he can to get the fight on, and that Team Joshua haven't taken the fight. And what I'm saying is that, according to your logic, Team Wilder's in a better position to make the offer than Team Joshua. That's my suggestion. No,
I'm saying, look, I don't give a shit who sends first, who offers. I don't care where it's on. Like, all I'm saying is that, like, sorry, what did you say? No, yeah, it's not like somebody will accuse a guy of ducking and everything has to be done before you accuse a guy of ducking. You know, that's just not how it works. People just accuse each other of ducking all the time, and it causes fucking heat, and it causes shit to be done, and it hypes up a fight, and blah, blah, blah. It's not like you need to go through all this big, long spiel of, have I done A, have I sent a contract, has he not replied to that text and done this? Am I legally covered now as saying he's ducking? No, you just fucking, you speak your mind. This is what happens all the time with fighters. This is what happens. I don't think AJ is ducking him, but I do think Eddie Hearn will be putting up barriers to that fight, because I think it's a risk to his investment. There's much easier big money fights out there than that one. But the fans and Deontay Wilder are asking for that one. And we should be supporting them for asking it, because that's the fight we want to see. I don't think any of us want to see Parker ahead of him. I don't see any of us want to see any of the other fights in the division.
I wouldn't mind seeing Parker
ahead of it.
Yeah, why not? It's another champion. It's a unification fight. It's a young fighter. Why not?
Are you saying you want to see him ahead of it? Because I think you'd be in the fast minority.
I'm saying I wouldn't. if say tomorrow there was an announcement that AJ versus Parker had been made for fucking February, I wouldn't be pissed off. I wouldn't think that was a bad fight, and I wouldn't be like, oh God, fuck's sake, we're not going to get AJ Wilder till maybe the summer now. Oh, how fucking bad's that? Like, I just don't get this fucking mentality. It's fucking gotta be now. It's gotta be now.
I think there is a bit of urgency, and the more I think about it, the more relevant I think this age thing is. For me, the fight loses a bit of its luster if it's not made relatively soon. I just don't think Deontay Wilder's going to get any better, and I do think he could potentially get a lot worse. The other thing, I mean, the other risk with these two is I like Wilder and Joshua. They are the consensus 1 and 2, but they're both very vulnerable fighters. They've both got weaknesses. You know, to quote Ultratech Sports again, they are both accidents waiting to happen. You know, if Wilder goes and fights Dillian White, if Joshua goes and fights Big Baby Miller, look, obviously they'll both be huge favourites to win, but you know, accidents can definitely happen. Definitely happen.
Yeah, but do you think I don't think it happening in the summer as opposed to January or February is a bad thing?
No, but I think it happening in 2019 as opposed to 2018 is a bad thing.
Oh,
so
I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Absolutely, I agree with myself and Gossip agree 100% here. Look, Wilder is only going to get 1 year older and 1 year slower, right? And I think that's the reason why they prefer to make Joseph Parker this year, right? And I think the other thing is that AJ could easily get knocked out in the meantime. I do believe that. I think AJ is much more, in my opinion, AJ is much more likely to get knocked out than Deontay Wilder. And I think, I think if Jarrell Miller goes in with AJ, I think that's a very dangerous fight for AJ. I think it's a very dangerous fight. So I'm a boxer fan. I want to see the best fight being made. And all this action by Deontay Wilder, I don't agree Dillian White has got one. I don't give Dillian White 5% chance against Deontay Wilder. I don't give him 3% chance. Deontay Wilder, it's just the number one fight. We should be supporting the fighters trying to make the best fights, just like we supported Golovkin for trying to make the Canelo fight, and Kovalev for trying to make the Ward fight, and Spence for trying to make whatever fight. We should support these fighters, and it's definitely the number one. I'd say if you were to ask the boxing people listening who they prefer, Parker or Deontay Wilder, I would be surprised if Parker got 20% of that vote, and they'd all be from New Zealand.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I prefer Parker. I prefer Wilder, but what I'm saying is, if say they made Parker for February and Wilder for the summer, I wouldn't think that would be a terrible result.
I don't think either will get made. My bold prediction, and this is a bold prediction, is that Anthony Joshua's big summer fight will be a Wembley Stadium fight versus David Haye. I honestly think that how it will pan out.
I think Dillian White, another Dillian White fight will happen probably this year.
I don't rule that out. I think that's a strong possibility, but I think the big fight, I don't think we'll see the unification. I don't think we'll see a Tyson Fury fight. I think it'll be David Haye.
Yeah, but what if David Haye loses to Bellew again?
Well, if David Haye loses to Bellew, then clearly the fight is gone. But I don't think David Haye will lose to Bellew again.
Like somebody in the chat there was saying that I'm wrong, that Hearn didn't offer the fight to Finkel to Dillian White, but Finkel came on and directly disabused Eddie Hearn of that, and Eddie Hearn didn't deny it. He said he had an email saying that he would, if he fought Dillian White, he would give him the AJ fight.
It was quite a messy conversation, Tom. There were lots of people on the line, a lot of very poor connections, people talking over each other. I heard what you're saying. I don't know if it's conclusive evidence. I think they've certainly discussed White, and they've certainly discussed AJ, and they've certainly discussed the two as the package, and they've probably discussed the two separately. I I kind of viewed it as too much of a mess to take anything from that, if I'm honest.
Yeah, and actually,
Well, like,
Eddie Hearn did say something at one point. He didn't refute it straight away, but after a couple of minutes, he said, because he couldn't get a word in edgeways for a bit, and then he did come and he said, Shelley, I'm not sure about what you were saying about me. Or he did actually address it and says, I don't think that was how it was happened. So he did refute.
well, I don't know, but he said he had the text. He came back and he said he had the text message or the email, and that he can show to people.
Say that anybody can say that. I'm sure everybody could have said they've got emails to whatever.
I know, but you know, this is Eddie Hearn. He's a born liar. The man previously said,
They all are, Tom.
Come on, I'm sure
yeah, but he
did offer the fight as a package. I think I'm sure he did. I'm sure he offered it as a two fight package, but for me, that doesn't mean that he wouldn't have offered it and didn't offer it as an individual fight. I just think that he wanted to do two. You know,
well,
I don't think that's conclusive proof he wouldn't just do one.
I just think that if Eddie Hearn had his way for this year, he would fight some kind of he might fight Parker in April or May in Wembley. And then he might fight somebody else who's not that good. So maybe a David Haye in another big fight. And then put off Deontay Wilder, who's an actual threat, for another year. That's my instinct. I think Deontay Wilder and the fans are pushing it to put the high-risk fight first. And Eddie Hearn's a businessman and a promoter. And, you know, which route would you do it if you were the business guy trying to make millions? You definitely keep away from Wilder. And I think that, but AJ is a fighting man. And I think AJ wouldn't like being called a bitch or whatever. AJ would like to take that fight. And I think that all of this stuff, which is brilliant, because it gets us all arguing and it gets us all interested in the fight, this might push the issue. And I hope it does, because that's what we really want. And and I do think that Eddie Hearn doesn't want AJ to go to America, because he'll probably lose control of him if he does. So, I think that definitely feeds into wanting to do these other fights at home first.
Somebody in the chat, Connor Boyd, shout out Connor, said that he thinks Bellew beats Haye again, and I agree. I think Bellew will beat Haye again. I think Haye looked like a shot fighter in that first fight. Even before the injury, I don't think he looked like he was particularly likely to beat Tony Bellew. And I've learned long ago to stop picking against Tony Bellew. I swore the last time I did I would never ever pick against him again, because he's the biggest overachiever in fucking British boxing in fucking years, man.
I agree Haye looked very poor, Paul. I do. But there's two things I'd say. The first thing I would say is that there were substantial rumours, I believe it even made the newspapers, that he sustained an injury in the run-up to fight week and actually in fight week. So I think it's possible he went into that fight injured, because he knew his name couldn't take another pull-out after all the pull-outs he'd had in his career. Secondly, I agree with you, he looked very poor. I still thought he was winning every round against Tony Bellew until the injury. I found it, you'd maybe give Bellew one round. I can't remember what round it was that Haye got injured in, but I had him well up at that point, So, he may not be the peak David Haye, but will he need to beat Tony Bellew? I don't know. But I'm like you, mate. I've picked against Bellew so many times, and I obviously still haven't done my lesson.
Yeah, I picked Makabu to beat him.
Same.
I
picked Mateus Masternek to beat him.
Do you remember that the only chance Tony Bellew has of beating Makabu is if he's hit by lightning? Remember that one?
I do. I cannot deny. Wow, okay. It was about half an hour ago since I said, Paul, have you got anything more you want to add before we wrap it up? Jet. Yeah, never. I mean, you've been like Bernard Hopkins tonight. Very low volume, very high quality. Have you? Mr. Wizzle said, did BG pick cleverly to beat Bellew? Absolutely, extensively. Yeah. Have you got anything before we wrap it up for the night?
Tom had picked cleverly to beat AJ, man.
You with us, Jet?
Nothing for me.
Good. I thought me and you, Jet, were supposed to take these two boys on today. I thought we were tag teaming them, and they taken over this. It was going to be Jet and an Irish takeover. What happened?
Is capable of the job. Neither of you is capable of it.
Well, when you say what happened, it was maybe that you started answering for him when I started asking him questions, Irish.
Yeah, we're a team. I had his back. I could tell from his icon there that he was, he wasn't ready for it.
There we go. Dare I ask, Iris, anything more from you before we wrap it up for the week?
I can't find my keyboard, so there's no music tonight. I'm sorry, Paul, but I won't be playing Misty for you.
Oh well, I'll give you a little bit of an outro on the old ukulele anyway. So if you wanna carry on, I'll give you a bit of a tune.
Okay.
Paul.
It's quite soothing, actually. The podcast has talent. We should start a band. Iris on the keyboard, Paul on the ukulele. I think Jay's quite good at beatbox.
Gossip, right. I heard you're good on the cymbal.
Yeah, I'm Liam Gallagher, mate. I go for the tambourine. That's
very good.
Let me wrap it up, guys. Still 160 of you watching live. We've been up to 250 tonight, so a huge shout out to everyone who's joined. Many thanks indeed for spending your Wednesday nights with us. 120 of you already have hit the thumbs up button. Please do that if you haven't done so already. If you're watching this after it's gone up on the YouTube channel, it will be about an hour or so after we've finished. But if you're watching that afterwards, please continue to hit the thumbs up button, which will mean it gets more visibility. Do subscribe if you haven't done so before. Keep the momentum going. Please subscribe to Jet's channel as well, which is Boxing Discussion. We'll be back next Wednesday at 8:30 with even more boxing to discuss. Many thanks to everyone. Cheers to the panel, as always, to Jet, to Tom, to Paul. And have a good evening, everyone.
Cheers.
Ciao.
Ciao.